Welcome to Resource Thursday with Lochbox. I'm your host, Paco Lebron. This is the place to learn how to run your service business, whether you are a one-person shop or leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. My co-host, Rick Smith, is not available today. He is not feeling well. However, we're going to have a jam-packed show with a lot of great value. But before we go ahead and introduce our guest today, I'd like to talk about my favorite thing, and that is TechCon Unplugged. TechCon Unplugged is this year, September 7th to the 10th in Woodbridge, New Jersey at the Delta Hotels Woodbridge. Join us for an evening mixer as we then kick off 2.5 days of great content that is going to focus on how to better your business. And again, it's going to go ahead and help save more time, more money, or make more money and improve your services. This is the show for any size IT solution provider, as mentioned in the intro. So whether you're an emerging MSP or you're a veteran in the space, this is the place for you. Tickets are on sale for our next tier of pricing at $299. So get your tickets now at techconunplugged.com. We have a lot of exciting things coming out. The agenda will be coming out here shortly, along with some familiar faces, new vendors, and some favorites coming back here this year in our 4th annual show. So again, TechCon Unplugged. We hope to see you there. All right. Super excited to introduce our next guest. We have Jim Christensen, CEO of Lochbox. Jim, how are you today?
Doing well. Thanks, Paco, for having me.
I appreciate you coming out here. I know that we met in Chicago for, I believe it was Contia CCF. Was that when you were in Chicago? Yep.
Correct.
And so, yeah, we had a great time. We were introduced to your product. You were gracious enough to gather quite a few IT solution providers, MSPs, to kind of talk about your product and the services that Lochbox has to offer the space. But before we kind of dive into what Lochbox actually is, I would love to know, and the attendee or for the listeners as well, is to know a little bit about you. And so, Jim, why don't you give us kind of your intro, your origin story of how you kind of came into the space / how you found Lochbox?
Well, we're a Utah-located company. I'm a Utah native. I come up through the finance leg of a business. Lochbox kind of grew out of a company called Callware Technologies. I've got a somewhat unusual employment history because I've been with Callware Technologies for almost 30 years. That's just kind of unusual. Wasn't planned, but that's just how it's happened. Callware is a voicemail software, and we've pretty much ran the gamut from the late 90s, building a huge reseller channel, 1,200 strong across the country, and then having the internet bubble.com burst and the telecom channel or the telecom industry kind of getting kicked in the chops at the same time. And that just was a little bit of a death knell for Callware at the time, but we survived. And at the time I was a controller, and I mean, we'd gone through 3 institutional raises, had a full 200-person team, and it just almost just blew up overnight. And I kind of knew where all the bodies were buried. Everybody after the C-suite just kind of bailed. They were just kind of looking to me to say, hey, what can we do? So we all of a sudden became a small team, and we were nimble and trying to figure out how to take what we had and adapt to what we could do. And over the next couple of years, we survived. And then, unfortunately, out of 9/11, the government started taking a more stringent look at security and all of their infrastructure. And lo and behold, voicemail got thrown into a legislatively mandated requirement that anything that touched their backbone had to be certified. And we just happened to have an install at McGuire Air Force Base back in New Jersey. Speaking of, pumping New Jersey and your show coming up. And we just happened to be, I guess, dumb enough to think that we could tackle this new requirement. And we were nimble enough to make the changes necessary. And we've delivered a secure voicemail to the DoD for the last 18 plus years. So just that alone is kind of a cool little story that a small company met the need, a really specific need of one of the largest customers in the world and one of the most difficult customers in the world for a lot of reasons. Number one, they're very slow. They don't move at the same speed of business. And it's been just a steady business, not a booming business. But it's kept us kind of in the game, and that's where we cut our security teeth. That's where we learned a lot of the what we call now cybersecurity. It wasn't called cybersecurity back then, and we've kind of just grown along with them, and I have as well, and now basically lead the company that we now call Lochbox Technologies, which is kind of a grown out of Colware Technologies.
Gotcha. Now, there's a couple things that before we dive into Lockbox, there is, the fact that you had this big, massive company where you were the controller, and then now it went down to a nimble business, and then you kind of were brought in to lead. Can you tell me a little bit about, because I know a lot of people, a lot of listeners, they're probably going through some tough times with clients, but tightening their belts. And we don't know what's going to happen later on in the year if something may drastically occur where people start making decisions and they're going to have to, and then with all the layoffs that are currently happening in the big tech space, and what the ramifications for there. Can you talk a little bit about kind of like your mindset when you had to obviously take lead, right? Because everyone was looking to you, you didn't really volunteer for the job per se, and really understanding that sense of leadership / what you knew that you can survive. Because I think there's a fine line with businesses that are struggling, even probably now without even the current economic pressures. They just are not seeing success, or they're not seeing the ability to really try and move forward. How did you kind of address that, being that you were put into this new leadership role and really trying to kind of see the light and help everyone see that there is a light kind of moving forward, that is not as grim as what kind of occurred?
Yeah, that's a good question. We just kind of collectively got together as a team and just said, do we believe that there is still something out there for us? At the time we had a fairly decent install base in the commercial sector, the SMB, and we just continued to service them. And at the same time, a lot of those dealers, that VAR channel, started to dry up. So we were kind of facing a tough challenge, and this opportunity just really hit at the right time, honestly. And I would just chalk it up to just kind of dumb luck. We were really at our last leg and just saying, can we do this? Can we survive? And it was just once we had that opportunity come up, it was a long. We were the first voicemail through this new process, so we were their guinea pig, and they were adapting as we were adapting to, like the field goal just was just constantly moving, and so it was a challenge. It took many months to get through their certification, but at the end of the day, we got a certification ahead of Nortel, Avaya, Cisco, 3 really large companies with lots of resources. They probably spent more resources on lobbying against the mandate, lobbying against the requirement, rather than just go change their product. So that was kind of fun that we got that. We had basically a 3-year head start on them, and we adapted our product from more of a SMB target to now more of an enterprise type of situation. You're going on a base, a military installation, that you could be supporting 50 users, or you could be supporting 50,000 users. And we were able to do that successfully. And then we were able to go and be switch agnostic and integrate with a Cisco, integrate with an old Nortel, and then an Avaya, and then as they transitioned from TDM and the analog world to digital, we were able to do that for them as well. So we've actually saved the government, the DoD, quite a bit of money in helping them adapt their, grow their telecommunications and grow into the new space that we're in now in digital. So I don't know if that's answered your question. We just kind of just buckled down, and we had an opportunity come up at the right time for us.
Yeah, no, it definitely did, because you said exactly what I was hoping you were going to say. And for those that didn't catch it, just to highlight what Jim is saying, is that it doesn't matter the size, it doesn't matter on what may be going on. If you really stick through on your core beliefs, you can make way on an opportunity, or make an opportunity for you that you may see in the land of chaos to help work for you. The most important is to adapt and pivot, but also being able to stay core to your true beliefs. So I think that's a great lesson for everyone to know, that, take advantage of all opportunities that are out there. There have been a lot of significant events over the last several years, maybe even and obviously longer than that, where people have grown from those opportunities that have presented themselves. And so that's something to listen here, that there is a chance, there is something out there for you to be able to take advantage of. It's just a matter of how you're looking at it and how are you making that work for yourself. But with all that said, I want to kind of dive back into Lochbox. And really, my first introduction to it was in Chicago. Seemed like an interesting platform, and kind of what the purpose is for Lochbox, right? But can you tell us a little bit about what is Lochbox, and what is the purpose for that, for any of the listeners that may be interested in what Lochbox may do?
Sure. It really came from that experience in the DoD of, again, paying attention to your customer, learning their pain points and what they're concerned about. So from our standpoint, our engineers were looking at it and saying, hey, we're just a voicemail company. Voicemail is kind of a dying thing. We got to do something. Engineers like to develop. They're innovators. They like to, at least our group, they just felt like we needed to do something and find something in the same space. And as we started talking to and paying attention to what the DoD was testing us on, our product had to be basically constantly certified on the latest threats. If something came up, they would reach out to us and we'd have to adapt. So we started paying closer attention. About 2018, they came out with a UCR. It's a Unified Capabilities Statement or something along those lines, really talking about what they're concerned about. And they're concerned more about our live communication. Voicemail is a file on a server that sits inside their enclave. It's important that not be hackable. But from their standpoint, they're at DEFCON 1 when it comes to our live communications, our voice, video, texting, and conferencing. So there's all kinds of vulnerabilities that we could talk at length about in each one of those areas. I don't want to bore everybody, but I think everybody's fairly aware that SMS texting is not secure. Our telephone lines, if you think how they were developed with basically a man in the middle plugging a switchboard and having speakers on listening. It's obviously developed since then and improved, but there's still a lot of vulnerabilities. From their standpoint, it's wide open. And then their next biggest concern is all of that digital data that is created nowadays. We're basically all digitally transformed, and every time we do something, we're leaving a digital footprint somewhere. They're concerned about where that digital data ends up. And from a government perspective, it's, they're looking at saying it's ending up in state actors that are not necessarily friendly to us. They're getting attacked constantly for information. The rest of us are getting attacked for nothing more than a simple shakedown. We're getting, they just want money. So as we started looking at that, we thought, could we do something that kind of addressed those two big concerns, the security and where the data ended up. And that's what we've done with Lochbox. Lochbox is a application, a platform that secures your voice, video, texting, and conferencing. And then at the end of the day, instead of us keeping your data, we deliver a private encrypted key server into your hands for you to turn up, and all of a sudden your data becomes your data, really for the first time ever. All of our mediums that we use to communicate, that number one are awesome. The ability for us to have this type of situation, the ability to instantly communicate across the world. It's incredible technology. But it's also that desire to have that instant communication. It's made us a little more lackadaisical. It's lowered our guard in terms of what we have been texting, what we communicate, and hence that data is out there and it's in the hands of all of these communication companies, and it's their data because they control the keys. As soon as we click the box to use that medium, we're willfully giving up our rights to that data. Hopefully they're using it in a good way. Hopefully they're using it to improve their product. Hopefully we know they're making lots of money off of it because they're using it to market, and which is their right. We've given them that right. We're trying to change that paradigm. We're trying to say, you know what, we need to raise our level of digital awareness in our communications, and we can do this by giving you back control of that. Now you control it. We don't have access to it. So now the rest of us, we're not so reliant on all these other big companies and all the employees that may have access to our data. We're not reliant on their policies, on their. I'm sure they're getting attacked constantly as well because they're a big target. Most of them are pretty big targets. So that's what Lochbox is.
Okay. Now, would you compare? So I know you mentioned, I think one of the big distinction is being able to hand over the user's private keys to themselves and them actually fully owning the data. That's really that differentiator and helping
Yeah.
with compliance and the security. Now, and I know that every service or product really doesn't like a comparison. Would this be more of something that could replace, let's say, a Teams or a Zoom? Or is this something that would supplement that? Or is this more something similar to like a Signal or a Telegram of some sort, but with obviously owning of that private keys of the data?
Yeah. A little bit of everything, I think. It depends on the
Okay.
size of the company. I think a smaller company, this could easily be a replacement for a Teams or a Zoom.
Okay.
For a larger company, it could be a supplement to where when you know you're going to be passing sensitive information or you're going to have a sensitive call outside the company or maybe even inside the company. Unfortunately, those mediums, it's true. They own those keys, and so they have access to that data. Are they accessing it? We don't know, but it's a new way to raise the level of your cybersecurity hygiene. I like to call it hygiene,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what we got to do if we're gonna really change the playing field against these hackers. Most of the stats I see in going to all these different conferences, most of the hacking occurs on our credentials. That's I think we've got a lot of really good tools out there that everybody's deploying that's hardening our systems, that are preventing some of the more easier attacks in the past. Um, and a lot of the your audience have been a part of that, of helping establish those protocols for companies. But in the cybersecurity toolkit, the one thing that nobody really talks about is securing the actual communication. We have a bunch of tools around the outside that will monitor endpoint detection, backup recovery, education. All those things are still really important, but really those things are there to alert us to when the attack has happened or when the breach is close or when somebody's in the system. They're getting in our system through our credentials. The credentials generally take place on our communications. And so that's where we feel like we fit nicely into the cybersecurity space and can help a small company or a large company improve that SIGING, whether it's a supplement or whether it's a full-on replacement.
Gotcha.
So,
And I think you even mentioned, I think even now, I think there's some legislation or rules that are being put in place for SMS text messaging as well. Because, I myself have received probably an uptick on the amount of spam text messages or
yeah,
smishing that's been occurring. And just a matter of just that. And then I have clients that are potential prospects coming to me saying, hey, we're getting a huge spear phishing attack through the SMS and posing as
yeah,
other people. And it's becoming very concerning
yeah,
where they now are trying to lock this down and they're trying to kind of get around it. And it just leads to what you just said on the not secure communications, right? And I think everyone, who is listening here has tried to migrate those clients from don't text me, email me, right? Because that was like the next form of somewhat of a secure
yeah,
communication. Then it was encrypted email, and then you had the Zoom takeover that happened X amount of years, and they've since battened down the hatches. So here, I think from what you're saying with Lochbox, not only are you securing those communications in general, but also having the ownership of that private key as well. Outside of access, right? I mean, really, that's what we've talked about today. Is there anything else that we should really be considering when thinking about securing communications and securing the ability of, I should use a service like this instead of Teams because, yeah, I have a BAA, but you just said access is a big thing. And sometimes we're notified after the fact of when something has happened and not being
yeah.
alerted. Is there any other scenarios that you've seen outside of access where, MSPs, IT solution providers should really be thinking about, all right, what's the next step of securing communications in that route, whether it is replacing or appending to something that they currently have right
Yeah.
now?
Well, the nice thing about what we've done is this builds a closed loop network. So it everything we have developed has been developed with a security first mentality. And if it doesn't fit in that methodology, then we kind of push back on adding it to the product. So when you build a closed loop network, you're employing that zero trust architecture mentality. You're inviting somebody into your group, your organization that that you can verify. They have to be verified. Their device has to be verified, whether it's their phone or whether it's a browser, before any encryption or decryption takes place. So now you're closing that attack vector down where you're not going to get those phishing attempts anymore. And that's a kind of a side benefit of what we've developed. And that's how you can create a situation to where even your lower level employees can be communicating outside the organization and know that they're doing it in a secure way. And so whether it's the C-suite that's having really sensitive communication, or whether it's your accounts payable clerk coordinating with somebody to make a payment,
Mhm.
now you can invite somebody into your organization. They're siloed. They have a role and responsibility where they can't see everybody. They can only communicate with the person that they have been invited to. It really just kind of, a lot we've been criticized a little bit. It says, well, there's a little bit of friction in that. And we're
Mhm.
like, yeah, you're right. There is. It's friction on purpose. That's the
Mhm.
only way we're going to improve coming from this instant communication, this instant need to have this thing, whatever we're doing, happen really fast. And that's just led to lots of holes and lots of vulnerabilities and lots of laziness. This way, it improves everybody's ability to communicate and know who you're communicating with and have that confidence that that's happening. And then at the end of the day, you know that you also control that data. So it's kind of a nice little side benefit, and that's what we're seeing. So as an MSP, you're again reducing your attack vector of your supply chain or your customer aspect. You're going to them and telling them, our communication is so important to us. This is how we want to communicate going forward.
Yeah.
And I think it just sends a message that you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert, but it sends a message to them that says, hey, we're serious about this. And even though all these other things we're all used to, this is the way to help improve and hopefully try to prevent. It's not going to guarantee it, but hopefully it'll prevent a slip up of because that's what these ransomware guys are doing, man. They're just sitting back and just waiting for us to make a mistake. They're building social profiles on us, and they're just lurking, waiting for us to, just go, I can't deal with this. I'm just going to send them my password or click on that email. And we just feel like it's a way to send a message to say we can do this better.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that from what you've mentioned, Ray, is the fact of, being able to address of the hygiene, as you just mentioned, and really making sure your security posture is in check. You've really communicated on the fact of why this is beneficial of owning your own data, and even the assistance on compliance, on being able to introduce this to help a more compliant solution for a particular industry that is having to worry about compliance, whether that's government, whether that's financial or healthcare, et cetera. Now, all of these services are definitely a need and what we try to do. But there's one thing that's so important to MSP and IT solutions provider, and that is time. And so when, let's say, someone that's trying to adopt Lochbox, can you talk a little bit about what is the time commitment to implementing this solution? And do they get help on the way as they're trying to develop these ideas or strategies of implementing a secured communication into their practice?
Yeah, we don't see it as a huge uplift. We go on base to train a DoD site for our voicemail system. It's like a day-long training. There's a lot involved in there. This is, it's fairly intuitive, but we will hold an MSP's hand until they feel comfortable with the admin panel and how they can go in and assign the roles and the rights, and how that helps kind of silo everyone into the areas that they need to be siloed into, how to set up additional organizations that are all siloed again away from each other. It's not rocket science, but it's got some serious guts behind it from a security level. All goes down your data channel, so it's kind of staying away from the telecom, the PSTN network altogether. It will still go out the cell phone, but it will go down to the cell data side of things. But from an administrative level, it's not that difficult. It really isn't. But we'd onboard somebody, train them, help them bring on their first couple customers, and after that, I think they're going to look at it and say, we don't need your help. We've got this. It's like I said, it's today's world. I think all these companies are can handle something like that. But it will eventually save them. They'll be able to bring companies on really easily. So
Gotcha. And that's a great feeling to hear, is that, nope, we got it. So, you have a good adopter that's really being able to embrace themselves and immerse themselves into the tool and obviously the practice that that you all are trying to do for your mission. Jim, as we kind of round out the episode here, is there anything that we have not touched on about Lochbox and really that you wanted to leave with the audience that is listening to today?
No, I think we've covered most of it. We're just in the process of essentially rebuilding a channel. We had a huge channel before, and now we're just going back. We launched back in September, and we're just going about judiciously trying to figure out where this best fits for the MSP. We've tried to figure out the pricing that's going to best fit with the MSP, and then right now just trying to figure out what the best message is, as you talked about earlier. Is it this a replacement or is this an addendum? And we feel either way it's gonna give that company an advantage, and it should be an upsell opportunity for an MSP to make some money. That's the goal. We don't want to add an additional cost layer into their seat structure. But I think what we're finding is this resonates. The message resonates.
Yeah.
This idea that you can actually own and control your own data. They say that data is the new gold. Well,
Yeah.
data is their gold when it comes down to it. And we're trying to change that for everybody and saying, hey, your data, you decide what to do with it. It's going to give them that advantage as they go forward, and we think that's a winning message. It's just getting people to change their behavior. That's the challenge.
Yep. And yeah, as we all know, behavior change is definitely a long road ahead, but definitely a battle worth fighting as well, especially when it comes to what we're talking about today. But Jim, really greatly appreciate you coming out here today. For those that want to get to either know more about you or want to know more about Lochbox, what's the best way for them to reach out? Just to either pick your brain or find out more about the product?
Yeah, well, more than willing to talk to anybody. My email address is jchristensen@lochbox.app. Reach out to me. I would love to discuss this with anybody in our team as well. Lochbox.app is our website. You can go there, learn about it, click on download the product and demo it right from the website. But yeah, it's we're ready to go, and we're excited to start to get this. We want to bring this military grade option to the general business sector, and I think that is our mission. So
very cool. Well, Jim, I really appreciate you taking out the time this morning. We were just talking about obviously the busy schedule you got going on and the exciting things going on with Lochbox right now. So for those that want to learn more, as you heard from Jim, we'll make sure we have his email and the website on the show notes as well when this episode is published. You should be able to see that in the show notes here, both on audio and on video as well.
Look for us in Vegas at Channel Summit partners or channel partners, and MSP Summit will be there April 30th.
May 1st through the 4th, I believe,
4th,
in
yeah.
Las Vegas at the Venetian. Yep.
We will be there. Cool. I'll be on stage a couple times talking about this. So yeah, we're excited. So
awesome. Well, Jim, really appreciate you coming out here, and we appreciate you for tuning in today. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday. You can watch the video podcast on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. You can go ahead and hit like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so that you will be notified whenever an episode is available. You can also take us with you on the go on your favorite podcatcher app. We're on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and on Spotify. Most importantly, if you love what you hear, please leave a review on your favorite podcatcher app as well. We want to thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.